Happiness was something I took for granted, something I believed would last forever. Meeting my husband, Keith, brought me happiness. That fact is etched in my memory. Living with our kind and devoted son, I savored a tangible sense of happiness. But lately, something has been troubling me. My husband has changed suddenly. Listen, you must never answer the door. Even if a delivery comes, you must not answer it. At some point, he started giving strange orders to my son and me. He repeated these commands, looking at us with eyes full of hostility. Moreover, he absolutely refused to accept any packages himself. What could that mean? I couldn't figure it out. The more I thought about it, the more anxious I became. Keith showed expressions so different, like he was a stranger. Had everything until now been a lie? I even began to think that way. I felt my footing becoming unsteady. On the fourth day of his business trip, it suddenly happened. Delivery. When I opened the front door, a cheerful courier was holding a package. I stared at the awaited parcel. Everything will become irreparable. That ominous feeling crosses my mind. It was exactly noon. I thanked the courier and looked at the delivery slip. The sender was Keith's colleague, and the recipient's name included Ms. Annika and mine. Why is my name on it? Overcome by unexpected tension, I could hardly breathe. My breathing quickened, and I felt paralyzed. I could feel my heart pounding intensely. With great effort, I headed to the living room and placed the package on the table. Summoning my resolve, I opened the package. Well then, for a penny, in for a pound. As I broke the seal, it was filled with Keith's truth. They came at me in bundles, as an unwelcome reality. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. It had all started already. Until I put an end to it, there would be no stopping it. My name is Annika Newton. I work as an office clerk at a local insurance agency. It's been 32 years since I graduated from high school, and this year, I turned 50, making me somewhat of an old-timer. I have excellent relationships with my colleagues, and no particular complaints. Naturally meticulous and cautious, I found that office work suited my personality. I methodically verify each detail, ensuring accuracy in everything I handle. Moreover, working in insurance, which touches upon the important aspects of others' lives, was fulfilling. To say the least, I consider it my calling. I met my husband, Keith, when I was in my 20s, and we got married. Keith is the sales director at a major construction company, a position that I, as his wife, take pride in. He is gentle, humble, and never arrogant, a truly kind person. Despite his high salary, appropriate for his position, he indulges in neither luxury or wastefulness. Instead, he cherishes his family deeply. Our only son, Billy, is now 20 years old. Even as his parent, I believe he has grown into a vibrant and fine young man. Tall and slender, he is the type who would attract attention even without parental bias. He inherited his gentle demeanor from his father and has a character that can't ignore someone in need. On the day of an important university entrance exam, he once helped an elderly woman who had collapsed by the roadside, almost making him late. Billy casually remarked, "I made it in time, so it worked out in the end." But it was a worrying moment for me as his mother. Although I was concerned, I felt proud of him for laughing and being glad that the elderly woman was safe. After all, Billy passed his university entrance exam and now studies mechanical engineering while living at home. In addition to his studies, he works part-time as a tutor and at a convenience store, contributing his earnings to the household. Indeed, he is a praiseworthy and devoted son, whom we are proud of. I live with my admirable family of 3. The house we currently live in was a wedding gift from Keith's parents. Keith's family was known for their significant wealth, well known in the area. I remember being amazed by the size of their house when I visited for the first time for our wedding introduction. I had never seen a garden with such an impressive pond in my life. Keith had hardly told me anything about his parents before our visit, playing innocent by saying, "Didn't I mention it?" Though his modesty is one of his strengths. At that moment, I wished he had given me a heads up. After all, I needed to be adequately prepared. Keith's parents were even more modest, generous, and kind-hearted. I quickly got along with them and grew fond of them as family, just as I did with Keith. Even after Billy was born, they often visited to enjoy time with their grandchild. Unfortunately, a few years ago, they both became ill and passed away one after the other. Since then, the house's title has been under Keith's name. I had a particular reason why I couldn't raise my voice against my husband. Soon after we got married, the insurance company where I worked faced a severe downturn, and my salary was temporarily slashed significantly. It was a major crisis right at the start of our newlywed life. Thinking about our future, I became overwhelmed with anxiety and started to feel downhearted. In those moments, my husband smiled at me and reassured me that everything would be fine. Despite the substantial drop in income, he managed our finances cleverly. His ability to run the household during that time was nothing short of remarkable. I thought it was all over many times, but I couldn't thank him enough for his support. Since then, I've placed my complete trust in him. As our family's treasurer, I entrusted him with all financial matters. We even made our joint savings account accessible to both of us freely. Some people worried about whether I felt uneasy leaving everything to him, but I never faced any trouble. Above all, I cherished the precious memories of how he supported me during that time, and I saw it as natural to trust him. Up to that point, I could say that I had nothing but trust in my husband. Anyway, our family of 3 cooperated and lived a modest yet peaceful life. However, I have a concern now. It's about none other than my beloved husband. For the past 6 months, one of his particular behaviors has been bothering me. It pains me to have doubts about the husband who has supported me all along, but his behavior is too strange to ignore. This peculiar behavior occurred whenever a package was delivered to our home. Every time the delivery arrived, my husband would instruct Billy and me firmly, "Listen, don't answer the door. Under no circumstances." He said it with an unusual level of caution, distinctly different from his usual mild demeanor. He would personally handle the deliveries, showing an inexplicably heightened wariness towards the delivery personnel. Confronting the delivery person, he would say things like, "I told you I won't accept such things. Now leave." He stubbornly refused to accept the parcels. Ignoring the bewilderment of the delivery person, he just kept shouting. It was a side of him I could never have imagined from his usual self. It reminded me of those dramatic reenactments on TV where people behave rudely towards store clerks. Watching such scenes, I often felt grateful that neither my husband nor son acted that way. That's why I was taken aback by this unbelievable side of my husband. At first, I thought it was due to his heightened sense of privacy. Perhaps he had things he didn't want us to see. Raising his voice in a hurry wasn't necessarily strange. But no, it's still odd. Keith, in my memories, had never shown such tendencies before. Even as I tried to convince myself otherwise, the gap between his current and past behavior raised more questions. And then there was the part where he refused to accept the packages. His expression, as he tried to send the delivery person away, was filled with an intimidating and fierce intensity. The once gentle and proud husband who cherished our family now seemed like a completely different person, someone I didn't recognize. I began to suspect that my husband was hiding something significant. Day by day, this doubt grew stronger in my mind. One day, I decided to confide in my son, Billy, about these concerns. Honestly, I couldn't carry this burden alone anymore. "Yeah, Mom, you think it's strange too, huh? I've been feeling the same way recently. It's like he is not the same as he used to be." Billy scratched his head, agreeing with my observations. I felt a slight relief at his words. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you. Can I talk to you about it?" Billy asked, looking a bit sad, as if he had made up his mind about something. I felt a tightness in my chest. What he was about to tell me would undoubtedly not be good news for me. It might even threaten to upend our modest happiness, the life we've built. Still, I had to know. "What is it, Billy? Please, tell me." Billy closed his eyes for a moment and then, hesitating, began to speak. He glanced at my face now and then, likely worried about how I would react to the news. Billy, too, had noticed the odd behavior of my husband lately, and had been carefully observing him. Normally, people don't get that paranoid about deliveries, right? I thought it was strange, so I kept an eye on him. And then I saw something. Billy's face turned slightly awkward. "Saw what?" "Dad's smartphone." What followed was bitter news. According to Billy, messages were frequently coming to my husband's phone from a particular person, seemingly an unknown woman. I didn't mean to snoop. We're family, and I don't like prying, but it was going off so often that I got curious. "I'm a terrible son, right?" "No, Billy, you did nothing wrong." The fact that he felt compelled to act that way showed just how abnormal Keith had become. He must have been anxious. I understood his feelings all too well. Billy mentioned that whenever my husband used his smartphone, he would always hide the screen, making sure no one could see it, not even Billy. And he would smile as he read the messages. How should I put it? It was a bit of a sleazy smile, you know, which was uncomfortable to see from my own father. Billy said this with a bitter laugh. "There's no doubt about it. Yay, honestly, I think it's suspicious." It was clear that my husband had something to hide, even when we pieced together the information. I debated whether to tell you, Mom, but without solid proof. I didn't want to just confuse you. Billy had been probing on his own to uncover the truth about my husband. If it was just an unnecessary worry, that would be fine. He also wanted to trust his family, which is why he tried to resolve everything by himself. But I should have told you sooner, before you started worrying. "I'm sorry, Mom." Billy apologized to me. "Don't worry about that. Thank you for telling me." From that day, my suspicions about my husband's behavior only grew. He began coming home later, often after midnight, using work as an excuse, and our family conversations became fewer and fewer. Even when he was home, he seemed restless, and sometimes he didn't bother to hide his irritation. On top of that, he started going out alone on weekends. When I asked where he was going, he would dodge the question with plausible reasons like work or client meetings. Often, he would return late at night, or worse, not come home at all without any notice. It became rare for the three of us to be together anymore. "Are you okay, Mom?" I was heartbroken. The kind husband, who had once been the pillar of our family, was no longer there. The man who prioritized his family and supported us with gentle care was gone. It was time to make a decision. "We need to get to the bottom of this, Billy. Will you help me?" Billy smiled warmly and said, "Of course." That gave me great strength. "Let's investigate again, including everything we've turned a blind eye to." I decided to confront the situation, no matter what the outcome would be. A week later, my husband had to leave for an urgent 5-day business trip. Right before leaving, He persistently warned us. Remember, don't answer the door for any deliveries. Just ignore them. Got it. His overt instructions made us look at each other and laugh. We were now certain. My husband definitely had a secret he was hiding from us, something inconvenient that needed to be concealed. And it has something to do with the deliveries, doesn't it? His attitude was so blatant that it was almost laughable, as if daring us to question what he was trying to hide. Honestly, we hadn't found anything substantial from our week-long investigation. We decided to accept the mysterious delivery when it arrived. On the second day after my husband left for his trip, a letter arrived at our house. Mom, could it be? Yes, it's clearly. The letter was wrapped in a cute pink envelope, the kind of design that young women would typically favor. However, there was no address written on it. The sender's name read Christina Smith. I recognized that name. It was about 6 months ago, I think. My husband had mentioned a new contract employee at his company. Her name was Christina Smith. Ever since then, whenever work came up in conversation, my husband frequently brought up Christina's name. For some reason, I remembered how he seemed unusually happy whenever he talked about her. In hindsight, that was when I first started feeling something was off. A heavy feeling settled in my stomach. Was this jealousy? No, it wasn't. It was sadness. I was sad. I was confused by this newfound emotion that I had been oblivious to until now. I took a deep breath and signaled to Billy. Since there's no address, we have no choice but to look at it. Billy nodded in agreement. I'm opening it. I said this to no one in particular, granting myself permission to unseal the letter. And as expected, its contents were just as I had imagined. No, they were more than that. They were either beyond imagination or below it, depending on how one looked at it. It was just so raw. And to put it bluntly, it was unbearable to read. I felt a wave of nausea. Billy's expression twisted, clearly discomforted by the content. Dad, is this for real? The horrifying content was far from a polite message a colleague would send. It was a love letter, brimming with Christina's affection for my husband, Keith, a collection of flowery declarations of love. She wrote about wanting to marry Keith soon. She expressed her love for him. She thought of him every night. She pleaded for him to leave his wife quickly and make her happy. These short phrases were scattered throughout the letter, endlessly repeated. As I read a few more pages, I realized that Christina was 32 years old, but her writing conveyed a childlike immaturity. No, it wasn't just childish. It was an immature style of writing. The words were self-centered, with little regard for others. They were superficial and light, lacking depth or maturity. She totally hated me. She couldn't stand the woman who kept Keith tied down. She wished that woman had never existed from the start. She felt like she was on the brink of breaking down. She would do anything to be happy. Even those malicious words toward me were written in that letter. I noticed my hands were trembling. Anger and sadness overwhelmed me at the realization that my husband's betrayal was real. Emotions swirled and consumed me. I wanted to tear this letter to shreds right now. The urge was overwhelming. Mom. Billy gently placed his hand on my back. He was there, just quietly supporting me. No words were needed to convey his warmth. I could feel it spreading from his touch. I'm okay, Billy. I somehow managed to calm the storm of emotions within me. Billy continued to hold me for a while, offering silent comfort. This man was no longer my husband. At that moment, our marriage ended for me. It was heartbreaking and infuriating. But we can't just let this go, can we? I couldn't possibly forgive this. I reaffirmed my determination to reclaim peace and happiness for Billy and me. Although I wanted to destroy Christina's letter immediately, Billy advised me to keep it as evidence. Yes, evidence. Billy and I needed to gather all the proof we could to uncover my husband's secrets completely. I would fully utilize my meticulous and cautious nature. First, maybe we should start with the money. Dad was in charge of the bank accounts, after all. That's true. It's generally believed that an affair partner is quite a financial burden. I decided to check our joint savings account to trace the money flow. There, I discovered unusual transfers to an unknown account, and the amounts weren't small. Starting about 6 months ago, large sums of money were leaking from our household budget each month. That's about the cost of my tuition every month. Even though Billy's tuition at a public university wasn't cheap, this amount was shocking. This much money. What could he possibly be thinking? I was overwhelmed with frustration. There was no record of Billy's part-time earnings in the account either. I can't forgive this. The balance showed only a meager amount left. Financial collapse was imminent. This is truly shocking. I was so devastated that I couldn't even stand up for a while. I loathed my foolishness and carelessness for having trusted Keith unconditionally and leaving all financial management to him. Where was my cautiousness? I realized how poor my judgment had been. After a while, Billy opened Keith's computer. This might be ethically questionable, but in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's go all the way. It didn't take long to find more evidence of betrayal. Several photos of Keith with an unknown woman were found in the photo folder. The photos clearly showed they were on dates, with a cheerful atmosphere. Keith's expression in those photos was one of gentle affection, something he hadn't shown to us lately. The photos were meticulously organized by date and location, clearly cherished. The dates revealed that the person accompanying Keith on his weekend outings was this woman. It was also easy to deduce that this woman was Christina. Feeling nauseous, I asked Billy to copy the photo data. Messages exchanged between Keith and Christina were also found on the computer. The dizzying love messages went on into the night on some days. I copied all this data and saved it on a USB stick for documentation. At this point, it's almost refreshing. These words came from an honest feeling within me. The anger of being betrayed was there. My heart was deeply wounded. Billy was probably hurting too. But we don't have to expect anything anymore. Billy's words surprised me. It was exactly how I felt. I didn't have to expect anything from the man who was once a good husband, a good father. I didn't have to be deceived again, holding on to a small hope. There was no need to keep repeating this. I could end it now. We decided to go over the evidence we had gathered once again. We've collected more than enough evidence, but there's still that one thing. Right. The one thing Billy mentioned was something we needed to confirm. It was the thing Keith had been unusually obsessed with, the thing he had tried to hide from us. We needed to check the contents of the package. From Keith's behavior before his trip, I was certain that a package would soon arrive at our house. I was sure there was something important hidden inside. All of his betrayals would be in there. I was certain of that. On the 4th day of Keith's business trip, it arrived suddenly. Package delivery. When I opened the front door, the cheerful delivery man was holding a parcel. I took the package with a sense of anticipation, feeling that the moment had finally come. It was exactly noon. I thanked the delivery man and looked at the receipt. The sender was a colleague of Keith's, someone I recognized. And strangely, the recipient was listed as Ms. Annika and my name. Why is my name here? In this unexpected turn, I was struck with an overwhelming tension. I couldn't breathe, feeling almost paralyzed. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my chest. I somehow made my way to the living room and placed the package on the table. I took a deep breath, but the suffocating feeling didn't go away. In fact, it only grew stronger. I have to brace myself. Whatever I found, I had to accept it. I couldn't look away. I had to face the truth. Billy was at university, so I was alone at the moment, completely alone. I decided to check first. With determination, I faced a cardboard box. In for a penny, in for a pound. When I opened it, the contents were documents. At first, I couldn't tell what kind of documents they were, but as I read through them, the contents gradually became clearer. It was an accusation against Keith. It revealed that Keith had obtained highly confidential company information and passed it to Christina. This was an act of industrial espionage, and it detailed how Christina had been engaging in transactions with a competing company in exchange for money. The documents, stamped with a red top secret mark, meticulously listed the specifics of the transactions, transfer records, and the detailed categorization of the information. There was also mention of Christina's true identity. She wasn't just a contract employee. She had infiltrated construction companies before with similar tactics, lured executives, and collected both money and information as a fraudster. A fraudster. Despite my trembling hands, I couldn't stop reading. Through an investigation by colleagues, it was uncovered that Keith had been tricked by Christina into leaking the company's confidential information. It wasn't a case of cheating driven by pure romantic feelings. It was a corrupt relationship bound by money. What kind of stupidity is this? This can't be true. The document also mentioned how, when Keith became the sales manager, he had stolen credit for a colleague's achievement, and the accusation ended with an expression of deep anger toward Keith. The frustration experienced by the colleague was evident in the words condemning Keith. The shocking accusation came from a colleague who had visited our house several times when he was younger. Back then, they had seemed so cheerful, enjoying drinks together. He had betrayed a precious relationship, trampled on our family just as easily, effortlessly, while wearing the mask of a kind person. I took a deep breath and looked over the documents again. The pounding in my chest and the shortness of breath didn't subside. It didn't go away, but I began to feel my mind gradually calm down. This time, I read through every detail as calmly as possible, taking in every word. I finally understand. Finally, I understood why Keith repeatedly told us never to open any packages. It took me a while, but now I realized. Keith understood that he had made enemies, that he had hurt others with his actions. He feared that one day, a package like this would arrive, one that would expose him and his wrongdoings to his family. He was terrified of the idea that his actions would destroy his family. There was no sense of responsibility in him. It was like a child complaining about something. What an insecure and prideful person he was. Pathetic. The time had finally come to make a decision. It was something I had started. I would take full responsibility for it. There was not even a hint of doubt. From then on, things progressed quickly, like a roller coaster. With the situation changing rapidly, I could barely keep up. I ran around desperately, trying to keep moving. By the time night fell, I had finally calmed down. "Mom, it seems like you've been through a lot today." I explained everything to Billy in detail when he got home. After that, I decided to go straight to the police. It wasn't just out of family responsibility, but because, as a fellow worker in the company, I couldn't forgive what Keith had done. The package contents, of course, including Christina's letter, and a USB flash drive filled with data, carrying all the evidence I had. I headed to the police station. I must have been in such a rush, for I was facing the officer barefoot. In my panic, it seemed I had dashed out just like that. The police officer who greeted me was surprised, but when I told him about the information leak and fraudulent transactions, with evidence from Keith and Christina, he immediately transferred me to a specialized officer. The officer who appeared seemed to be well versed in cybercrime and information leaks. I explained everything in as much detail as I could, and the officer immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. He gave me a few pieces of advice. First, he strongly recommended that I take all the evidence to Keith's company and report the information leak and fraudulent transactions. He assured me that the contents of the USB flash drive would serve as more than enough motivation for the heinous acts. Moreover, regarding Christina's letter, which could be seen as a form of blackmail, the police promised to step up patrols around our home. I felt incredibly relieved by their support. It was the first time I felt that the struggles I had gone through, along with Billy, were being acknowledged. I felt comforted by the way they stood by us. Afterward, I continued with the momentum and went directly to Keith's company. Of course, I was still barefoot. The reception staff seemed overwhelmed by my determination. The head of Keith's department took charge, and, after I presented the evidence of the information leak and fraudulent transactions, immediately understood the seriousness of the situation. He promised that Keith would be called back from his business trip, and they would conduct interviews with both Keith and Christina. Ms. Newton, you've been through a lot. We will definitely repay you for your actions. Please, rest assured. I fought back tears at my boss's words. As I was about to leave the office, I was stopped by a familiar face. It was the colleague who had bravely blown the whistle. The colleague deeply apologized to me, saying they were sorry for involving me. Don't apologize, not at all. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for gathering the courage and speaking up. I expressed my gratitude. After that, I left Keith's company, which was starting to make a scene, and quickly headed home. Billy, I've decided to divorce. I have lawyer friends because of my work, so I plan to ask one for help. Billy nodded and smiled. I fully support you. I've decided to cut ties with him too. Do whatever you feel is best, Mom. I'll support you with everything I have. He clenched his fist firmly. Taking advantage of the situation, we quickly packed the necessary items and decided to temporarily move to a business hotel. I made sure to leave the divorce papers on the living room table. Before leaving, I took a slow, final look around our home, filled with memories. I felt a bit sorry for my parents-in-law, but my desperate feelings outweighed any guilt. The next development came in the evening the following day. While relaxing at the business hotel after work, my smartphone rang. It was from Keith. A wave of dark emotions washed over me, but I had already made up my mind. I pressed a call button on my phone. Hello, Annika. What the hell is this divorce paper about? He immediately let out a high-pitched scream. He was breathing heavily, visibly flustered. There's nothing to explain. Just submit it over there. I responded calmly and as matter-of-factly as possible. It was to make it clear to Keith that we were no longer family. If it's about Christina, I'll apologize. I was just deceived. You can forgive me, right? I was completely shocked at how casual Keith sounded at this point. Forgive him. What in the world gave him the right to ask such a thing? If this isn't going anywhere, I'll hang up. I sighed and was about to end the call. Wait, don't hang up. Seriously, where did you even find all the evidence? Suddenly, Keith turned the blame on me. What was he trying to do? I had no idea what his goal was. Perhaps Keith didn't understand his own goal either. It was all just futile. Your kind colleague told me everything. Your most hated delivery service gave me a wonderful gift. I gifted Keith a sharp, sarcastic remark. I hoped the sting of my words would penetrate Keith just a little deeper. That was what I was thinking. Because of you, I'm about to be arrested. The company knows everything, and it's over. It's all your fault. He spat those words at me. It was a remark that left me in disbelief. My fault. The unexpected accusation made my voice involuntarily become stronger. Anger seeped through my words. I had to stop myself. I needed to stay calm. No, I apologize. I misspoke. Anyway, let's start over. We've been through trials together before, haven't we? We can surely overcome this one too. Keith continued to spew out convenient words. He was pushing his incoherent claims on me. Suppressing my feelings of disgust, I stabbed my words through the phone. How can we possibly start over when you've committed adultery, information leakage, and illegal transactions? This trial is your own doing. Deal with it yourself. I exhaled everything I had been holding back in one breath. If this didn't get through, I wouldn't have any more words for Keith. It felt like talking to someone who wasn't listening. A sense of resignation began to creep in. Yes, I had known it. No matter what I said, it wouldn't reach him. No, it wasn't that. Nothing was ever reaching him in the first place. He wasn't having a conversation with me. He was just talking about himself. Please, Annika. I was just giving Christina the information. I had no idea about the illegal transactions. I'm the victim here. He yelled and screamed, completely shocked that things had escalated to this level. Just as I had expected. Even at this point, all that came out of his mouth were self-defense statements. It was clear that Keith, not me, wanted to shout that he was the victim. So you're saying that the regular large transfers from our joint account to Christina were also because you were deceived by her? You're not guilty. I lowered my voice even further and spoke those words. Well, that's... Keith suddenly faltered, unable to respond. The excuses that followed were unbearable to hear. Keith explained that he had grown close to Christina during overtime hours and became intimate with her. Amidst the busyness, there were moments when they could relax together. In the daily routine of working together, he had unwittingly let his guard down. Neither of them could remember who first said the decisive words, but it seemed that Keith and Christina had naturally fallen into an affair. Christina had a tendency to overspend and was always broke. She would spend her salary on the same day it was earned. As a result, she often asked Keith for money. The phrase asking for money made my skin crawl. But Keith, it seemed, couldn't resist giving anything Christina asked for, simply because she was young and beautiful. He became infatuated, consumed by this infatuation. He poured household money into Christina. His sense of guilt seemed to have been completely numbed. You weren't the type to frequently check bank books or account balances, so I thought she wouldn't notice a little spending here and there. It just happened. How could it just happen be an excuse? I had to suppress my urge to shout. Christina had completely become dependent on Keith, knowing that whenever she asked, he would give her as much money as she wanted. With just one or two sweet words, she could manipulate him freely. But as soon as the details of the case came to light, Christina disappeared, fleeing without a trace. Listening to Keith's story, I was struck by a major question. When I was struggling financially, Keith had supported me. How was it possible for Keith, who was easily manipulated by a bad woman, to handle things so well at that time? Keith, as if resigning himself, finally confessed the truth. The truth is, the way I managed things was thanks to the advice of my late dad and mom. It wasn't something I came up with on my own. What a revelation! It turned out that the reason he appeared capable was because of his parents-in-law support. I was left speechless. The husband I had loved and respected turned out to be an illusion. I've always had a complex about Dad and Mom. Compared to my successful parents, I felt pathetic. That's why I couldn't tell you about my family until we were married. What I had thought were Keith's humble and modest virtues were all just a twisted reflection of his insecurity. The word disillusioned ran in my head like a siren. There was no kind, family-oriented husband to be found anywhere. He had never existed from the start. How could something so sad happen? Certainly, in the memories from that time, I was happy. Or so I thought. That's why it feels so empty and painful. I can't help but feel frustrated and regretful. Before I knew it, I was crying. The tears that overflowed, I'm not sure which emotion they stemmed from. I couldn't quite discern it, but I clenched my teeth, determined not to let Keith notice my tears. I desperately pretended to remain calm. These tears were not for him. I'm truly done with you. Billy and I will sever ties with you completely. We'll never meet again. I said it firmly and pulled the phone away from my ear. Keith's voice scattered like an annoying noise. Hey, wait. We're family, right? I'm about to get fired. Are you telling me to live alone for the rest of my life? You heartless person, aren't we family? Keith shouted, speaking quickly and throwing words at me. He seemed to be in complete disarray. If only that desperation had been directed somewhere else. Still, I couldn't sympathize. In his voice, full of desperation, the word family came through in broken fragments. It was unbearable. Who was it that put family on the scale and weighed it against something else? If you hadn't submitted the evidence to the company, none of this would have happened. It's all your fault. Everything. It's all your fault. Take responsibility. If you have complaints, please go through a lawyer. Goodbye. I ended the call, and this time, I shut him out completely. I immediately changed my phone number, and there was no more contact from Keith. Afterward, Keith was charged with information leakage and fraudulent transactions, and it seems he ended up in police custody. Naturally, he was not granted any leniency and was moved behind cold walls. As for me, with the help of a lawyer I knew, the divorce was officially finalized. Since I had gathered evidence of the misuse of our joint savings, Keith was ordered to pay an unusually large alimony. For me, severing ties with Keith was my top priority, so I didn't mind if I never got the alimony back. I deeply desired to completely cut ties with Keith. Keith was sentenced, and as the details became public, he was disowned by his relatives and old friends. He now lives in solitude, filled with regret, claiming that no one has helped him. After his release, he tried contacting everyone he knew, but they all ignored him. He works hard for a modest income, physically and mentally exhausted. It's karma. As for Christina, her fate was revealed in the newspaper one day, with the headline "Fraudulent Scammer Arrested," and her mugshot. It seems that even after she vanished, she hadn't learned her lesson and continued to commit crimes. It reaffirmed that a person's true nature doesn't change so easily. She also faced criminal responsibility and spent some time reflecting on her actions. Billy and I left our old house, moved to a secure apartment, and now live happily together as a family. I suggested to Billy that it might be a good opportunity for him to live alone, but he declined with a smile. I still want to stay with you, Mom. I couldn't stop the tears of joy from overflowing. He's truly a filial son, and I'm so proud of him. For his sake, I promised myself to make every day as happy as possible. I swore that in my heart.
Get out of here, you worthless excuse for a person. Finally, the gold digger is leaving. My husband David and Fael Joseph looked at me with contempt. Their sneering faces were identical, a testament to their kinship. Beside them, Emael Sarah and Sael Linda tried to stifle their laughter. It was uncanny how much they resembled each other in the worst possible way. For 2 years, I endured their constant harassment. They exploited my timid nature, using me as their punching bag. But I've reached my limit. I listened in silence as they hurled insults at me. Seeing my passive response, they only intensified their verbal assault. They had no idea. What awaited them was a hell they couldn't imagine. My name is Nancy, and I turned 30 this spring. After graduating from college, I worked as a typical office lady in the city. My life consisted of commuting between home and the office, and I worried I'd remain single forever. Then, one day, everything changed. While traveling with friends, I had a fateful encounter. It's quite rare to have young visitors in such a remote place. I'm pleasantly surprised. The one who greeted us at the remote hotel was David, who was single at the time. His family ran the hotel, and he was training to take over as the second-generation owner. David wasn't particularly handsome, but his kind smile captivated me instantly. Gathering my courage, I asked for his contact information, and we gradually grew closer. Actually, I've been thinking about you ever since I first saw you, Nancy. After one of our many dinners, he confessed, his face flushing red. I was overjoyed to know our feelings were mutual, and I eagerly accepted his confession. After 3 years of dating, we got married. His home was far from mine, which worried my family. Don't worry. David's parents and his sister Linda are kind. There's nothing to be concerned about. I was a bit sad to leave the company I had worked at since college, but I quickly settled into my new life, working at the hotel after our wedding. The family home was on the same property as the hotel, making my commute easier compared to my days working in Los Angeles. However, my carefree thoughts soon vanished. Nancy, there are wrinkles in the laundry. Oh, I'm sorry. Really, have you never done laundry properly before? The one complaining is Sarah. Sarah, who used to seem like a pleasant hotel owner, gradually began to criticize me more after the wedding. Hey Nancy, can you finish this job for me? I need to go pick up the kids. Yes, I understand. Linda, who initially seemed kind, now treated me like a convenient servant. She had returned to live with the family after her divorce a few years ago, and her child, much like her mother, was quite spoiled. Honestly, Sarah and Linda overwork you. If you need help, come to me. Joseph appeared kind on the surface, but his eyes were filled with blatant lust when he looked at me. There was a time when he walked in on me while I was showering. It was an accident, he said, but his face was twisted in a grin. Is this how my life will be from now on? 6 months into the marriage, Sarah's verbal abuse became relentless. Linda began stealing my belongings and money. And Joseph started openly trying to touch me. I was reaching my breaking point. In tears, I finally turned to David for help. But my family would never do such things. He shouted at me, his face red with anger, refusing to listen. From that point on, he also began to harass me. I wish I had dated you longer. Then I would have realized how useless you are. By the time a year had passed since our wedding, I had grown accustomed to hearing such remarks from him. Harassment from my in-laws became a daily occurrence, and I survived by numbing my emotions. But then, one day, Nancy, come with me. Huh? Where are we going? Sarah glared at me sharply as she answered. To the gynecologist. Since you haven't gotten pregnant yet, we need to get you checked out. What? I had grown used to enduring everything with a blank expression, but this shocked me. Sarah, seemingly pleased with my reaction, grabbed my arm firmly. Let's go. Wait! Sarah was large and strong, and my resistance was futile. She dragged me to the gynecologist, where I was examined thoroughly. The result was that I had difficulty conceiving. The doctor said it wasn't impossible for me to get pregnant, but it would be challenging. As soon as Sarah heard the diagnosis, I knew it! She lashed out at me. When we got home, Sarah told Linda and Joseph that I couldn't get pregnant. Before I could correct her and explain that it was just a difficulty, not an impossibility, they began to insult me. If I had known David's wife was useless like this, I wouldn't have let him marry you. Exactly. I supported you because I expected you to bear the third generation of the hotel. But now that you're useless, there's no need to protect you. At least serve as our labor force. We should just get a divorce immediately. There's no need to keep someone useless around. I couldn't even cry at the barrage of cruel words. All I could do was endure. My marriage was a huge mistake. His words cut the deepest. There was no one here to help me. That realization hit me hard. Still, I wanted to have his child because we were married. I thought maybe if we had a child, the criticism from his family might lessen. With a small glimmer of hope, I decided to talk to David one day. David, can we talk? Huh? Does it matter to me? David, sitting in his usual spot in the living room reading a magazine, didn't even look at me. Recently, David either ignored me or responded coldly when I tried to talk to him. But I mustered my courage and spoke up. I want to try fertility treatment. If we underwent fertility treatment, surely we could have the child everyone wanted. Before I could finish, David's angry voice cut me off. What? We don't have money for that. Suddenly shouting, David threw the magazine he was reading at me. I was so shocked that I stood there, dumbfounded. It's your fault for not being able to get pregnant properly. If you really want treatment, pay for it yourself. But I don't have any money. After our wedding, Sarah took my debit card away. She claimed it was to prevent unnecessary spending, but she probably just didn't like me having financial freedom. Though I hadn't shared my PIN, preventing her from using it, I had no money of my own. I never received a salary for working at the hotel. Given these circumstances, I had no money of my own. I know. I'll get a job outside. What? Sarah said our finances are tight recently. If I work outside, I can help with expenses. Our hotel wasn't doing badly, but my in-laws were extravagant spenders, keeping the household finances always tight. I thought this was a great idea. But to David, it was just another reason to be angry. Nancy, you're recognized in the community as my wife. If my wife starts working outside, people will think our business is struggling. Can't you understand that? But how else can I make money then? I don't care. With that, he stormed off, leaving me alone. I couldn't go out to work, nor could I afford fertility treatments. What am I supposed to do? All that was left for me was a sense of hopelessness. For the past 2 years of our marriage, I had endured constant harassment from my in-laws. Recently, they didn't even call me by my name, referring to me as useless, incompetent, or simply you. I was no longer his wife, I was the servant of my in-laws. In the beginning, I cried a lot, but now I felt nothing. Would I spend my entire life as a servant to this family? The never-ending days were taking a toll on my heart. Lately, the stress had built up so much that I couldn't sleep properly. Though I thought I had become numb, my heart was silently screaming in agony. Ugh! The continuous lack of sleep caused me to feel dizzy. As usual, I started cleaning the hotel alone from the early morning before anyone else woke up. If I didn't finish before the family woke up, I might be punished by skipping breakfast. Fighting the dizziness, I kept working. "Ah, you're already up." A sudden voice from behind startled me so much that I almost jumped.
"Joseph, you're up early."
"I'm old, so I don't sleep well," Joseph said with a big yawn. I wished he would help since he was up early, but I kept my thoughts to myself and continued working. "You don't look well."
"Let me see,"
he said, persistently closing the distance between us. His eyes were filled with a disgusting leer, and I finally realized the danger of being alone with him. As his hand reached for my waist, I quickly stepped back, feeling nauseous.
"I'm fine. I'll just go clean outside."
I hurried outside, and he didn't follow me. I collapsed on the road in front of the hotel. "I can't take this anymore." Tears began to fall as I muttered those words. My heart had finally reached its limit. I reached for the mobile phone in my pocket and called my dad. Knowing that Dad was usually up early for his morning walk, I instinctively dialed his number despite my confusion.
"Nancy, what's wrong?"
As expected, Dad answered immediately, and I tearfully explained the situation. I want a divorce. I want to come home." Dad listened silently, then spoke gently.
"All right, I'll come get you right away. Can you wait a little? I won't forgive those who have tormented my precious daughter."
Dad's voice was kind, but he couldn't hide his anger towards my in-laws. After that, I went to the city hall and got the divorce papers. I filled them out and presented them to David and the others who were now awake. Oh, really? I expected David to yell at me, but he signed the divorce papers without hesitation and handed them back to me. A bit surprised, I took them, and David said with a twisted expression,
"I was planning to divorce you soon anyway, since you can't have kids and can't do the hotel work properly. You've saved me the trouble. Right, everyone?"
David turned to face his family as he spoke.
"That's right, we don't have the luxury to support someone useless."
Exactly.
"She's totally worthless. She used to have some value because she had money, but now her wallet is empty.
She's completely useless."
"Yes, indeed. At the very least, she could have told me the PIN for the debit card I kept for her."
Sarah and Linda directed their identical nasty smiles at me. Joseph, his pride hurt by my earlier rejection, nodded at David's words and spoke.
"David's right. Get lost quickly, you failure."
David burst out laughing at Joseph's words.
"Well said, Dad. Ah, I feel relieved. Finally, the gold digger is gone."
Seeing his twisted face, I felt a wave of nausea rise within me. Why did I ever fall for such a terrible person? Was my judgment that poor? In the past, I wouldn't have felt anything when they hurled insults at me. But now, I was regaining my emotions. Seeing my in-laws' twisted faces, anger welled up inside me. A few hours after I called Dad, I received a call that he had arrived at the hotel, and I sighed in relief. Mom was preparing to welcome me back home, so Dad and my brother Brian were the ones who came. I gathered my few belongings and headed to the entrance. Over the past 2 years, Linda had stolen or Sarah had thrown away many of my things, so my possessions had dwindled to a small, easily manageable amount.
"Well, I'm leaving now."
"Wait.
"We won't be satisfied unless we say a few words to your family."
"We're coming with you." My in-laws followed me with lecherous smiles. But as soon as we stepped outside, their smiles froze.
Is this a luxury car?"
David's words echoed my own surprise. Parked in front of the hotel was a car so luxurious that even someone like me, who knew little about cars, could recognize it. My family didn't own such a car. As I looked around, thinking it must belong to someone else, Dad got out of the driver's seat.
"I'm here to pick you up, Nancy." "Dad? What is this car?"
Before Dad could answer, the back seat door opened, and a large figure emerged. The man looked at David standing behind me and narrowed his eyes as he spoke.
"Long time no see, David."
"David. You're Nancy's brother." David pointed at Brian, his face slightly pale. Yes, this large man was my younger brother.
"No way. At the wedding, he was just a normal size."
David's shock was understandable. Brian had become fascinated with professional wrestling just before I got married. Back then, he was a university student, but he repeatedly asked our parents if he could become a professional wrestler. He worked part-time while pursuing his dream. During the 2 years since David last saw him, Brian had been relentlessly training his body. As a result, he had become a man so muscular that David and my in-laws were visibly intimidated. I wasn't too surprised because I had seen Brian's updates on social media, but seeing him in person was a bit overwhelming. Even though I knew about Brian's transformation, I was taken aback by his imposing presence. My in-laws were probably even more shocked.
"I've heard from Dad. It seems Nancy has been quite taken care of."
Brian glared at my in-laws with sharp eyes. His body wasn't the only thing that had changed in the past 2 years. Brian, who used to have a gentle face, now had eyes as sharp as blades, piercing through my in-laws. His expression conveyed a barely contained fury. David, standing in front of Brian, looked like he might run away at any moment. Despite his impressive physique now, Brian used to be very dependent on me. When he was little, he often got sick and missed school frequently. "I want to play outside," he would say, almost in tears, lying in bed. I would read him storybooks and watch TV with him to keep him company.
"Nancy, read this next,"
he would say, holding out a book with a feverish smile. I would stroke his head and read to him until he fell asleep. I was 5 years older than Brian and doted on him, which probably led to him developing a bit of a sister complex. I remember when I was in high school and got dumped badly, Brian was furious and wanted to storm to my ex-boyfriend's house. By then, he was no longer weak and was taller than me, so it was tough to stop him. Even after I got married, Brian's sister complex remained, and now he stood intimidatingly before my in-laws.
"Brian, you've gotten so big. So, you're here to pick up Nancy, right? Nancy, get in the car and go home,"
David said, his voice trembling slightly, trying to sound gentle. It had been years since he spoke to me so kindly. I couldn't help but smirk at David's pathetic attempt to change his attitude in front of a formidable opponent. Brian seemed to feel the same way. He took a step forward, glaring at David.
"First, you need to take responsibility for what you did to Nancy." "Responsibility? What are you talking about?"
David was sweating profusely, looking around nervously. Unable to meet Brian's intimidating gaze, his eyes darted everywhere.
I am warning you, if you lay a hand on me, I'll call the police." "Huh? Do you think I would hit you?" "I'd break your bones." "I don't hit weaklings. I'm not that cruel."
Brian's calm yet threatening words made David's face briefly contort with anger. His useless pride was wounded, but facing such a muscular man, he couldn't muster a retort and bit his lip. Seeing him like this, Brian looked exasperated and turned back to Dad, still in the car. "Dad, bring Anthony over."
"All right,"
Dad replied, stepping out of the driver's seat and opening the passenger door. When the person inside stepped out, my in-laws gasped.
The branch manager! Why are you here?
It wasn't just my in-laws who were surprised.
Anthony! Hey, Nancy, long time no see. Oh, by the way, this car is mine. I splurged a bit.
Anthony waved at me with a smile. Anthony, my uncle, was supposed to be working at a bank's overseas branch. He couldn't attend my wedding due to his busy schedule and had only sent a gift. Since then, we had only exchanged messages. As I struggled to process why he was here, Dad explained. Actually, Anthony returned to the US a few days ago. His overseas assignment ended, and he's back at an American bank. By coincidence, he's now assigned to a bank in the same area where Nancy lives. He was going to contact you when I told him about the divorce, so he decided to come along. Anthony nodded at Dad's explanation, then turned to my in-laws with a smile.
I've visited the local bank as the new branch manager and greeted some of the people who visited the bank for loans. I didn't realize then that Nancy's husband's family owned the hotel. I wasn't able to attend the wedding, and Nancy didn't tell me much about her in-laws' hotel. Plus, I was so busy that the greeting was brief, and we didn't get to introduce ourselves properly. So that's what happened. Wait, a loan? This hotel took a loan from the bank? I didn't know that,
I said, looking at David, who avoided my gaze awkwardly. Well, the business has been struggling recently. I realized that they had taken out a loan without telling me. Thinking back, it did seem like the number of customers had decreased recently. Despite this, the lifestyle of my in-laws hadn't changed, and they hadn't taken any measures to improve the situation. I was appalled by their complacency despite the tough business conditions.
No way! Nancy's uncle is the branch manager of our bank?
Joseph muttered, turning pale. Beside him, Sarah and Linda also looked ashen. Remembering how they had mistreated me, they probably regretted it now. They turned to me with overly friendly smiles.
Oh my, we didn't know your uncle was so important, Nancy. You should have told us.
Really? We're so close, Nancy, why didn't you tell us? Sarah tried to touch me in a friendly manner, but I avoided her.
Don't touch me. Are you planning to pinch me again?
Sarah would pinch my arm when she was especially annoyed. It didn't cause any serious injury, but it was painfully annoying. Surprised that I had exposed her behavior, Sarah's face contorted.
Pinch you? I've never done that to you, Nancy.
Really?
Have you also forgotten dragging me to the gynecologist against my will and accusing me of being infertile?
Brian's eyes widened as he glared at the in-laws. Dad's face lost all emotion, staring coldly at them. Anthony kept his usual smile, but his eyes were not smiling. With anger hidden in his eyes, Anthony slowly turned to face the in-laws.
Is what you said true? That is. I was just worried about Nancy and took her to the hospital. I never meant any harm. Shut up.
Anthony's smile finally disappeared. He directed his low, dark voice at Sarah, then spoke to Joseph with a stern face.
How dare you mistreat my dear Nancy? The loan deal is, of course, canceled. Go find another bank. With your financial situation, that might be tough. Wait. There seems to be some misunderstanding.
As he said this, Joseph approached me.
Nancy, tell your uncle it was a misunderstanding. Don't come any closer. Are you planning to touch me again?
It was my dad who exploded with anger at these words.
What did you do to my precious daughter?
His face turned red with rage. A loud shout, unlike any I'd ever heard, echoed everywhere. Facing Dad's furious expression.
Eek!
Joseph whimpered. Dad, don't. If we get physical, it will only make things worse. I understand how you feel. I would also love to punch them until their faces are unrecognizable. Brian's harsh words made the in-laws tremble.
If we stay here any longer, someone might get hurt.
Trying to end the confrontation, I stepped forward. I took out my cell phone, opened a recording app, and played the recordings of their insults toward me. Based on these recordings, I will sue you.
What?
Why are you surprised? Did you think I would just quietly divorce you? For the past 2 years, I had been passively obeying my in-laws. But I always held a slight hope that I might leave this house someday. Thinking it might come in handy, I secretly recorded their insults with my cell phone.
Well done, Nancy. I'll find you a great lawyer. Really? That's reassuring.
Casually looking outside the hotel grounds, I noticed that the neighbors had gathered without me realizing it. They had probably heard my dad's enormous shout earlier.
What's all the commotion about?
Isn't she the wife of the hotel owner's son? Taking advantage of this, I loudly declared to the in-laws so that the neighbors could hear.
How dare you harass me for the past 2 years? Forcing me to undergo examinations at the OB/GYN, stealing my belongings, touching me. I am not your convenient servant. I'm not a robot who feels nothing when insulted as incompetent or useless.
I thought my tone was a bit theatrical, but this way, the neighbors would know the in-laws' misdeeds.
What? The people from this hotel harassed their son's wife?
That's outrageous. To add the final blow, I played the recordings of the in-laws' insults again. This time loudly enough for the neighbors to hear.
What? This is terrible.
Isn't it understandable if she sues them? Noticing the commotion from the onlookers, the in-laws became visibly unsettled. From now on, their bad reputation would spread throughout the neighborhood. But that was their own fault.
Well then, thank you for these past 2 years.
With a bright smile, I bid the in-laws farewell. They could only watch in despair as I got into Anthony's car. After leaving my in-laws' house, I hired the lawyer Anthony had recommended to file a claim for compensation in the divorce court. Incidentally, I had quickly submitted the divorce application at the city hall on my way back to my parents' house. The lawyer handled the compensation claim for the divorce court, but when I heard the report that it had been a bit of a hassle, I was exasperated. When the lawyer met with the in-laws for the compensation claim, they repeatedly made selfish assertions.
We don't have that kind of money. We absolutely won't pay. That's right. Because of Nancy, we lost the loan.
They shouted at the lawyer, but... Shall we go to court then? With this one sentence from the lawyer, they fell silent and eventually agreed to pay the compensation. The in-laws had to sell some of their assets to raise the compensation, but it seemed the real trouble began afterward. Because I had exposed their misdeeds to the neighbors, they were all coldly looked upon by the local community. Linda's mom friends at the preschool her child attended heard the rumors and severed ties with her. Sarah was shunned by the neighborhood ladies and gossiped about. Joseph struggled immensely with the hotel management after the loan was cut off and couldn't find another lender. This was likely due to Anthony, now the branch manager, informing nearby banks about the hotel's precarious situation. In the midst of this, David, through the lawyer, desperately requested to meet with me. I also had things I wanted to say to him, so I decided to meet him one last time. Just in case, I had Brian present as well. When I saw him at the lawyer's office after a long time, he looked quite worn out in such a short period.
Please, come back. Our hotel is in a dire situation. If you come back, the neighbors won't look at us strangely anymore. We need you, Nancy.
David pleaded deeply. I responded in a cold voice to David, who was begging like that.
David, you've never apologized to me, have you?
David looked surprised at my remark. He hadn't apologized until now because he wasn't aware that he had done anything wrong to me. With a big sigh, I said my farewell to David.
Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life. These past 2 years were a complete waste of time. If I could, I would erase every memory of you. Just thinking about you makes me feel disgusted.
These were the words I wanted to convey to David. Finally saying them made me feel relieved. David burst into tears at my thorough rejection.
Don't play the victim and cry. You don't have the right to do that. Goodbye, and I sincerely hope we never see each other again.
Leaving David collapsing in tears, Brian and I left the lawyer's office. With everything settled, I was living peaceful days back at my parents' house. I had found a new job at a company near my parents' home, and I was planning to move out and live alone once my life settled down. My new job paid a decent salary, enough for me to live independently. Most importantly, the environment where people didn't disregard me was something I was deeply grateful for. I wasn't sure if I would remarry, but for now, I wanted to cherish my time alone. Having made the huge mistake of marrying David, I had lost confidence in my judgment.
Maybe I should ask Anthony to introduce me to someone nice.
Anthony, who had always been fond of me, would surely introduce someone good. But for a while longer, I wanted to take it easy and heal the emotional scars from the past 2 years. And now, Brian was set to make his professional debut in a local wrestling tour. Brian, who had achieved his dream of becoming a professional wrestler, now aimed to reach the top of the wrestling world. Brian, chasing his dream, looked dazzlingly bright. The Brian who used to be so weak had now managed to debut as a professional wrestler. If the pre-marriage me had heard this, I would have been absolutely shocked. I planned to cheer him on at his debut match with my parents and Anthony. Imagining the fun days ahead, I smiled. Starting next year, we'll be living with my parents. Emma, you'll take care of them. My husband Ethan declared loudly in front of everyone at the housewarming party for my in-laws' new home. His words weren't taken as a joke, everyone realized he was serious. The laughter died down, and cold stares were directed at Ethan. Yet, he alone looked satisfied and shifted his gaze to his brother, Lucas. So I'll be taking this house. Mom and Dad will be relieved. I'm more reliable than useless Lucas, he announced. He probably thought that taking on the responsibility of caregiving would raise his standing and that he was lucky to get the house. But it sounded like he was entirely leaving the caregiving to me. I couldn't help but laugh at Ethan's foolishness. What? I'm not taking care of them. Your wife quit a week ago, I said.
What?
Ethan responded, flustered. Relatives murmured in surprise at my shocking words, and Ethan started to panic. He tried to cover it up, but I wasn't going to let it slide. I spoke up in front of my in-laws. My name is Emma. I'm a 42-year-old housewife. The truth is, I grew up in a child welfare institution. My parents divorced when I was young, and I was taken in by my mom, who passed away from illness when I was 9. With no siblings or knowledge of my grandparents, I was left all alone, which made me yearn deeply for a family. When I was 23, I met Ethan, who was 3 years older than me. He worked at his father Jackson's company and already held a managerial position. Being surrounded by family in a family-run business made Ethan someone I admired, and for some reason, he took a liking to me.
I'm not worthy to be Ethan's girlfriend,
I thought, feeling too humbled to refuse, let alone become part of an executive family. But Ethan continued to pursue me persistently. In the end, I succumbed to his persistence, and we began dating and eventually married. I worried that my background would make my in-laws dislike me, but my mother-in-law Isabella and the rest of the family were wonderful people, making me feel blessed to have married Ethan. However, there was something about Ethan that concerned me. He harbored a strong inferiority complex toward his older brother Lucas. Lucas also worked at Jackson's company and was the next in line to be president. Being brothers in the same job should have made them strong partners, but with Lucas being the eldest and the designated successor, Ethan viewed him as a rival. I understood why he might feel this way, but Ethan's feelings towards Lucas went beyond mere rivalry. I first noticed it shortly after our marriage. After the wedding, Ethan moved out of his parents' house, and we started our newlywed life in an apartment near his workplace. Once our life settled down, Ethan opened up. "I'm proud that I got married and became independent before Lucas. Lucas is a great person, and he's dating someone too, right? I'm sure they'll get married soon. Then Isabella and Jackson can relax," I replied, meaning that parents would feel at ease once their children were settled. However, Ethan frowned at my words. "What do you mean by that? Are you saying they can't feel at ease just because I got married? That's not what I meant. Yeah, I'm just the second son. The eldest son gets all the privileges." Ethan's childish remark filled my young heart with guilt. He continued to harp on about being the second son for a while. Each time, I offered supportive words, but they never seemed to reach him. About 2 years later, Lucas's marriage was announced. His partner was Mia, a woman he had been dating since college, and I had met her several times. She was a perfect match for Lucas, a truly wonderful woman. Jackson, Isabella, and I were delighted about the marriage, but Ethan uttered something outrageous at the wedding. "I thought they'd break up eventually, but it's Mia, huh? He's even got a better wife than me." I couldn't believe my ears. I didn't even want to ask what he meant. I certainly don't think I can compete with Mia, who is intelligent and beautiful as a woman. However, I thought it was wrong for Ethan to say that, and in the first place, it's not something that should be compared. With a small, bitter smile, I whispered, "I'm sorry." It was Isabella who stood up for me. "What are you saying? You're the one who lost by making such disgraceful remarks in the first place." Isabella, who stated this clearly, then turned to me and said quietly, "I'm sorry. Ethan just wants to complain about Lucas. Don't worry about it. No one thinks there's a winner here." Thanks to Isabella's comforting words, I managed not to cry. But Ethan's displeased expression remained, and he continued to sit sulking. After that, Ethan involved me in his attempts to outdo Lucas at every turn. Shortly after Lucas's wedding, he started saying, "We have to have a child before Lucas." But I didn't get pregnant easily. I felt sorry about it and made efforts to conceive, but in the end, Lucas and Mia were blessed with a child before us. When Ethan found out, "It's your fault we lost," he was furious. A year after Lucas and Mia had their child, we were blessed with a child too, but our baby was a girl. Lucas's child is a boy, and we have a girl. He even extended his rivalry to our children. Nevertheless, Jackson, Isabella, Lucas, and Mia all doted on our daughter, Sophia. "I want our next child to be a girl too," Mia said, also doting on Sophia. Ethan, the only one discontented with Sophia being a girl, watched as she grew up loved by everyone in the family. However, I never had another child. It had taken a long time to conceive Sophia, and it couldn't be helped. I considered it a miracle and a great blessing to have Sophia at all. During this time, Lucas and Mia were blessed with a much-awaited baby girl. I was happy for them, but I also found myself dreading Ethan's possible snide remarks. We need to build a house before Lucas does, at least. Ethan's competitive spirit burned bright, and he announced plans to build a new house. Jackson and Isabella, oblivious to Ethan's motives, happily provided the funds. I wonder how long Lucas will keep renting. Despite receiving financial support from Jackson and Isabella, Ethan still made snide comments about Lucas. I felt uneasy whenever Ethan tried to compete with Lucas. Building a new house under these circumstances didn't bring me genuine joy.
You shouldn't say things like that. There's no need to compete. He's your only brother.
I repeatedly admonished Ethan for his backbiting, but he never changed. Even after moving into our new house and watching Sophia grow up healthy and happy, Ethan never recognized our happiness. He constantly saw Lucas as an adversary. The more I tried to reprimand Ethan for his behavior, the colder he grew towards me, eventually voicing his dissatisfaction with me as well.
If I'd known you couldn't have a son, I wouldn't have married you.
Those words made me cry in secret. When Sophia had just turned 12, an incident occurred. Ethan came home late every day because of work. However, when I asked Mia, she said Lucas was home. I suspected an affair, but as a housewife, I couldn't afford to hire a private investigator, so I could only confront Ethan directly.
Why are you coming home late every day?
It's work.
You know that. What's with the sudden questioning?
But Ethan coldly brushed off my question.
But Lucas isn't staying late at work, right? Is it only you working late?
Feeling uneasy, I asked this, and Ethan clicked his tongue.
What's with the insinuation, checking up on me like that? I wasn't trying to check up on you. But that's what it is, isn't it? You already knew it wasn't work.
Ethan made exaggerated noises and tried to intimidate me with his loud voice. Though I wasn't scared, I fell silent. Caught between the fear of knowing the truth and the need to address the situation, Ethan finally said, "I'm popular with women.
Unlike Lucas, I won't be tied down to an old woman."
I was stunned and deeply shocked by his words. Ethan continued speaking, revealing more. His current girlfriend, a 22-year-old named Harper, was beautiful and never complained, unlike me.
Harper is beautiful and doesn't nag like you. I should have married her from the start. Marrying you just because I was in a rush to wed before Lucas was a mistake.
I had endured so much, but hearing this, I finally reached my limit.
Fine then, why don't we just get divorced?
Ethan laughed.
Sure, I'm fine with that. But you'll be the one struggling, not me. No family, no job, I'm doing you a favor by staying. You should be more grateful.
Angry, I stood up and thrust the divorce papers I had been holding out. I had kept these papers as a talisman, a reminder that I could always free myself. Presenting them now meant the end. I expected Ethan to be taken aback and apologize. However, my hope was quickly shattered. Even seeing the divorce papers, Ethan merely sneered.
If you want me to sign, I'll sign. Not like you have the guts to go through with it.
He signed the papers without hesitation. Mocked, I knew divorcing now would only put me at a disadvantage.
Go ahead, file them if you dare.
Ethan's taunting words echoed as he handed me the signed papers. Frustrated, I could only grip them tightly. A year passed. The in-laws decided to rebuild their house. The old house was inconvenient for Jackson and Isabella. They considered remodeling but decided to build a new one, as Jackson wanted a custom home for their final years. They consulted Mia and me, resulting in a beautiful new house. They planned a celebration party, inviting the family.
Emma, could you help with the preparations?
Isabella asked.
Of course,
I replied. Due to a request from Isabella, I ended up helping with the party preparations. The large new house seemed too big for just Jackson and Isabella, but I assumed they would eventually pass it on to Lucas. A few weeks later, the family gathered for the celebration. Mia and I were busy with the preparations. Sophia and Lucas's and Mia's children had lessons and would join later, allowing the adults to have some time together first. Everyone raised their glasses for a toast, and then Ethan spoke up.
"This is a great house, isn't it? We made sure to have plenty of rooms so you all can visit anytime."
Jackson replied, clearly pleased. Isabella smiled warmly, also looking delighted. Then Ethan said something surprising.
"But isn't it too big for just the two of you? How about moving in with us?"
I was shocked. What was he thinking? Everyone else laughed, thinking it was a joke. Didn't he just build a house a few years ago? What are you talking about?
"Yeah, and what about Sophia's school?"
Someone added. But Ethan's expression remained serious.
"Sophia will start middle school next year, so it's perfect timing. Starting next year, we'll all live together. Emma can take care of Mom and Dad."
It became clear to everyone that Ethan wasn't joking. The laughter died down, replaced by confused and cold stares. They all wondered what Ethan was thinking. Ethan, however, seemed pleased with himself and turned to Lucas.
"So, I'll take this house,"
he declared, looking at Jackson and Isabella.
"Don't worry, Dad and Mom. I'll take better care of you than useless Lucas."
Everyone was visibly puzzled. Ethan seemed to think that taking on the caregiving responsibilities would raise his standing and allow him to claim the house. He also seemed to assume that I'd handle all the caregiving. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Everyone's eyes turned to me as I laughed.
"See, even Emma agrees. Don't worry, we've got this."
Ethan misunderstood my laughter as agreement. I decided to set him straight. "What?"
"I won't be doing any caregiving."
"I quit being your wife a week ago."
"What?"
"Stop joking."
"Aren't you marrying young and beautiful Harper?"
My words caused a stir among the in-laws, and Ethan started to panic.
"Harper? What's going on? What do you mean?"
Ethan, trying to cover up, forced a smile at me.
"What are you talking about? I don't know anyone named Harper."
I wasn't going to let him off the hook.
"Don't play dumb. It hasn't even been a year since you told me about her."
I continued with a smile. "Harper, who works at the same company."
"You said she was 22 a year ago, so she's 23 now?" "You boasted about dating young and beautiful Harper. That's why I quit being your wife."
As I exposed his affair, Ethan grew increasingly panicked. By the time I finished, he was pale, sweating profusely, and looking down in desperation. In contrast, Lucas turned bright red with anger.
"What's going on? You're having an affair with a coworker?" "Isabella, contact HR right away and ask about an employee named Harper, around 23 years old." "Understood,"
Isabella replied, her face also pale, as she stood up with her mobile phone.
"Wait, no, please wait,"
Ethan yelled, trying to follow Isabella, but Jackson and Lucas wouldn't let him. Lucas and Jackson's fury didn't subside as they continued to shout at Ethan. The rest of the family looked at him with disdain, making him feel even smaller.
"Ethan, explain yourself properly,"
Jackson demanded.
"But,
Ethan stammered, unable to form coherent sentences under Lucas and Jackson's grilling. I watched it all with a smile. No matter how many questions Lucas and Jackson threw at him, Ethan kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding. Fed up with his evasions, Jackson slammed his fist on the table, making a loud noise as he stood up.
"Dad, not a cent will go to you.
all will be given to Lucas and Sophia as a living inheritance. Leave the company. From today onwards, you are not allowed in this house."
Ethan panicked. Jackson, who had been deceived by Ethan's lies and self-preservation, finally got really angry. Realizing at last that things had gone beyond repair, Ethan hastily began explaining.
"Please, Dad, listen. It's not like that. I don't want to hear it. I'll get the details from Emma later. Now, get out."
Ethan looked at me, pleading for help with his eyes. But I had no intention of helping. I would just tell the truth.
"Of course, I'll explain everything later. But for now, the food is getting cold."
"Yes, let's eat," Mia added, helping me redirect everyone's attention. Finally, people began to eat. Relieved, Ethan tried to start eating with everyone else, but at that moment, everyone glared at him.
"You get out." "But, no, No excuses. Just leave."
Unable to withstand Jackson's shouting and everyone's cold stares, Ethan stood up. His pathetic figure was almost comical.
"Emma, let's go,"
he said to me, trying to maintain some dignity.
"What?"
For a moment, I wondered if he expected me to leave too. But Jackson quickly intervened.
"Why should Emma leave? You're the only one leaving. Right, goodbye."
Ethan left the in-laws' house, visibly upset. Seeing him driven out was a satisfying sight. A few minutes later, Sophia and the other kids arrived from their extracurricular activities, oblivious to Ethan's absence.
"It's been a while since we've all gathered like this. It's fun,"
Sophia said, making me laugh. She seemed to understand who truly cared about her. After a delightful time, Sophia and I returned home. Once the relatives left and only family remained, I explained Ethan's actions in detail to Jackson and Isabella, who apologized and expressed concern for me. Despite feeling sorry for causing a scene at the celebration, I reassured them and headed home.
"Welcome back. What the hell was that?"
Ethan yelled at me the moment we stepped inside. Not wanting Sophia to witness our argument, I sent her to her room and prepared to confront Ethan.
"I only told the truth because you made such reckless claims. But saying you quit being my wife. Don't you feel any shame in front of Dad and Mom?" "I really have quit being your wife. The divorce papers have already been filed."
Ethan, shocked, stared at me with his mouth open, anger momentarily forgotten.
"Don't you remember? Just a week ago."
I began recounting the events to Ethan. A week ago, he had come home past 1 a.m., drunk after being with Harper.
"I come home to relax, but seeing you here just makes me more tired,"
he had said, waking me up just to insult me. I was not a saint who could forgive infidelity indefinitely. Although I had endured for the sake of staying together, that remark pushed me to my limit.
"Fine. Then, we'll get a divorce." "You always say that, but you never follow through. I'm the one who wants a divorce."
Unable to tolerate the situation any longer, I submitted the divorce papers the next day. Ethan behaved normally the following day, either forgetting due to his drunkenness or pretending to. Regardless, I took advantage of his ignorance and quietly prepared to move out. Ethan turned pale at my words.
"I said that. It was just a joke. I didn't mean for us to divorce." "What do you mean, didn't mean? We're already divorced." "Even if we're getting a divorce, we need to discuss it more. This makes me look like the bad guy."
Suddenly, Ethan flew into a rage, yelling at me.
"It's not just making you look bad, you are the bad guy."
I confronted him with the reality, but he refused to acknowledge it, getting angrier instead.
You have your faults too. What will Dad think after what happened today?
Ethan mumbled, clearly more concerned about his image than our relationship. I was increasingly disillusioned with him.
Anyway, I'll move out as soon as the new place is ready. What? You think I'll let you off that easy after what you pulled? If you want to leave so badly, get out now.
How could he say such things to a wife he had been with for over 15 years? Knowing I had no place to go and still saying such things is just too cruel.
What's wrong? If you apologize to me properly and tell Dad and Mom that you were lying, I might forgive you.
Ethan sneered. I could manage alone, but with Sophia, I couldn't afford to lose our home. Just as I was feeling cornered, a savior appeared.
I recorded your argument. I've already sent it to Grandpa and Grandma.
It was Sophia. When Ethan's loud voice started to be heard, Sophia, who had been worried about me and hiding outside the living room, came out of the bedroom. It seems she recorded the scene of Ethan yelling at me and sent it to Jackson. Ethan turned pale again at Sophia's words. The last thing he wanted was for Jackson and Isabella to hear what he had said. As my lips curled into a smile, Ethan's phone rang. It was Jackson. Ethan reacted to the ringing phone but hesitated to answer.
Should I tell them it was all my lies?
Ethan glared at me as the phone continued to ring.
Or will you explain yourself?
Ethan clicked his tongue, grabbed his phone, and walked out to take the call. Whatever he said, he was going to get an earful from Jackson. Later, Isabella called me. She told me Jackson wanted to talk to Ethan again. And Ethan was heading to the in-laws' house the next day. The next morning, while Sophia was at school and I was preparing to move, the doorbell rang. It was Lucas.
Lucas, what brings you here?
Emma, I'm really sorry for Ethan's behavior. Dad sent me.
Jackson did?
Lucas nodded and immediately called a locksmith to change the locks. Once the new locks were installed, the company's legal counsel arrived next. They were there to arrange compensation claims against Harper and Ethan. It happened in an instant, but with Lucas's support, I quickly took care of the procedures.
We can arrange for Emma to get the house in the division of property. Considering Ethan's infidelity and the money he spent, he probably doesn't have much besides the house. At the very least, I want Emma to have it.
Of course! I was surprised by this conversation, but soon tears started to fall. These were tears of relief, knowing that I could continue to raise Sophia as before.
Emma, I know you've always taken good care of Ethan, Dad, and Mom. Ethan may be a hopeless brother, but I consider you my sister. And Dad and Mom wanted it this way too.
Lucas said this to me. Overwhelmed with gratitude, I struggled to find the right words to thank him. At that moment, I realized that Ethan would never be able to surpass Lucas. After being severely scolded by his parents, Ethan came back home. But the house was already locked. Of course, he couldn't enter with the key he had.
Emma, what do you think you're doing?
Hearing Ethan's voice, Lucas stood up and went to the door.
Admit your fault and apologize. Lucas? This house belongs to Emma. If you want to come in, you must apologize first.
Ethan was silent for a while, but Lucas explained to him that the house was awarded to me in the property division. After some time, Ethan finally spoke words of apology.
It was all my fault.
I peeked from the living room to see his expression and noticed neighbors laughing at him as students were coming home from school. Emma, I'm really sorry. I was wrong. Please let me in so I can apologize properly. Ethan kept repeating the same words. Seeing his pathetic state, I couldn't help but laugh. He said he would go to a motel for the time being.
Under Lucas's supervision, he came into the house to get his things and then left. Perhaps it was because Lucas was there, or because of the scolding he received from Jackson and Isabella, but Ethan didn't complain to me as usual. I watched him leave the house quietly, feeling both relief and a sense of poetic justice. The next day, Lucas arranged a meeting with Ethan and Harper. He asked if I wanted to join, but I declined, knowing that seeing Harper would make me feel ill. Instead, I asked to be connected by phone so I could hear the conversation. I needed to hear what excuses Ethan would make.
Was what Emma said true?
I heard Lucas's voice, followed by Ethan's.
I'm really sorry to Emma, but it was true love. I've already broken up with Emma, and I plan to marry Harper.
I felt irritated by his words, but if that was the case, so be it. As I was listening to the voices coming through the phone and thinking about this, a voice interrupted.
Wait.
Was it Harper? I heard a young woman's voice.
Are you kidding me? You call our relationship true love? Disgusting. What? That's impossible. To be honest, I can't accept any settlement money for this.
I was shocked by her words. Lucas and Ethan, who were on the other end of the call, were likely just as surprised.
But ultimately, you did hurt Ethan's wife. You understand that, right?
Lucas said.
Even if you say that, it's not my fault. Ethan is certainly at fault. But you are also an accomplice. You have an obligation to pay.
I felt reassured by Lucas standing up for me. Harper, realizing she couldn't escape, responded irritably.
Fine, fine. I got a lot of things from him, so it's not a total loss. A loss? Harper, didn't you say you wanted to marry me? This is a burden for you, but we can finally.
I heard Ethan's voice. But Harper burst into laughter.
What are you talking about? Did you seriously believe that?
No way.
You were just a source of money for me.
I struggled to suppress my laughter. It seemed that Ethan was the only one who thought it was true love, while Harper saw him merely as a financial provider.
Besides, you've been hitting on other women too, right? Why am I the only one at fault? What?
Were the other women not interested? Oh, I've really met a weirdo. Ethan must have been deeply shocked. Although I was angry with Harper for her affair, I felt a little satisfied that she had given Ethan a severe blow. Harper was at fault too, but there was no doubt that Ethan, who flirted with young women at work despite being married, was a despicable person.
Harper, you must be joking.
Ethan's tearful, pained voice was followed by Lucas's deep, exasperated sigh. No, no. Saying it was true love is a real joke. What part of middle-aged Ethan did you think I'd fall for? You need to face reality. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ethan, who must have heard my laughter on the other end of the phone, called out my name in realization.
Emma!
Realizing I was listening, he called out my name, but I only muttered,
My condolences,
and hung up the phone. Sure, Ethan had some money, but that was his only charm. He wasn't good-looking, didn't value his family, and such a man fantasizing about being loved by a young, beautiful woman was just a fantasy. After the meeting, Ethan came back to the house in less than an hour. He started shouting in front of the locked door again.
Emma, what happened earlier was different.
Different? There's no need to explain to me. We're strangers now. I spoke to Ethan through the front door.
Don't say that. If you just forgive me, we can go back to our old life, right? That would be best for you and Sophia too.
Oh? How convenient for you now that Harper dumped you. Unfortunately, I don't have a hobby of picking up trash that others have thrown away," I said with a laugh, and Ethan fell silent. "Reflect on your actions and live honestly from now on. You'll soon get official notice about the settlement and child support." After a while, I could hear Ethan crying. He finally realized his foolishness. I knew I would never forgive Ethan. Still, I hoped he would fulfill his minimum duties as Sophia's dad. In the end, Ethan lost his family, job, and Harper through all of this. He was still not allowed into the in-laws' house and was disowned by both his relatives and Jackson and Isabella. He currently lives in a dormitory of a company known to Lucas, working under a hidden identity. Jackson insisted he work in a supervised environment to ensure he pays the settlement and child support. His new workplace is full of older colleagues. For the first time in his life, Ethan, who had never been in a position to be reprimanded, was now learning the true harshness of the world while being scolded by others. Harper was fired from her job. She couldn't pay the settlement in one lump sum, so she proposed installments, which I agreed to. I don't know what she's doing now, but so far, she has been making the monthly payments. She won't finish paying off the settlement until she turns 33. By then, she might be married or have children. The fact that she continues paying the settlement is a bigger blow than the amount itself. I hope this experience has taught her to live more wisely and avoid foolish mistakes in the future. As for me, I've returned to work at Jackson's company on Lucas's recommendation. Sophia is now in middle school, and we live together in the house I received from the property settlement. Mia and Isabella help out when needed, especially when I work late, by taking care of Sophia and feeding her. I am truly grateful to everyone for supporting Sophia and me in our daily lives. As Jackson said, most of the property had already been gifted to Sophia and Lucas while Jackson was alive.
"Even if there's a tax, it's much better than letting Ethan get his hands on it,"
he said. I plan to use it wisely for Sophia's future. Although Ethan is no longer part of our lives, I still consider Jackson, Isabella, Lucas, and Mia as my true family.
"Back then, I said I wouldn't take care of the family, but I now think of you two, Jackson and Isabella, as my real parents. I intend to take care of you too, so please don't worry. I'm sure Mia feels the same way."
One day, I conveyed this to Jackson and Isabella, and they cried tears of joy. Now, I believe that marrying Ethan wasn't entirely bad. In married life, it's not just the relationship between the spouses that counts. In fact, relationships with in-laws and siblings-in-law are just as crucial. In my case, I've been troubled by my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. No matter how unreasonable their demands, I found it hard to push back too hard, knowing they were my husband's family. However, their overconfidence finally led to a deserved reckoning. It was such an unbelievable turn of events that it really drove home the lesson: never be mean to others. My name is Amy. I'm a 29-year-old corporate employee. After graduating from college, I joined a publishing house and have now reached my 7th year. I work with authors and writers, coordinating various articles for magazines. Magazine deadlines can turn the job into a relentless grind, but lately, I've gotten the hang of it, and despite the challenges, find my days quite fulfilling. There were times I regretted joining a publishing house, but those days are gone. I'm committed to thriving in this industry. I've been married to Keith for nearly 3 years now. We met through a friend and quickly clicked over our shared love of tennis. Our relationship blossomed, and 2 years later, we happily tied the knot. We don't have children yet and are enjoying our life as a couple. Our marriage has been harmonious, and we're known in our neighborhood as a loving couple. However, there was one problem in our seemingly blissful married life. It was my relationship with my mother-in-law Rebecca and my sister-in-law Claire. Both lived with my father-in-law Thomas. Claire, who is single, works as a gig worker and spends her weekends at matchmaking events or singles parties. We live in a rental house, so our daily lives don't overlap much, but we still have to visit during long summer vacations or Christmas. Though it's burdensome, I can't avoid it, out of respect for Keith. That's when the harassment from Rebecca and Claire would start. Hey Amy, long time no see. Haven't you gained some weight? Your skin is a wreck, and your hair's a mess. With your looks, you'll embarrass our Keith. Really, I wonder why Keith married someone as unfashionable as you. We were happy he got married, but it's pointless with someone unattractive like you. I'm too embarrassed to even tell people Amy is part of our family. The moment I step into their house, they start attacking my appearance. I may not be a beauty queen, but that doesn't mean I don't care about my looks. I manage my diet and exercise regularly, and by all accounts, I'm a healthy weight and size. I avoid foods that are bad for my skin and get my hair treated with hair care items once in a while. Frankly, from my perspective, Rebecca and Claire aren't exactly paragons of beauty themselves. It's baffling how they feel entitled to look down on anyone. Caught off guard, Keith intervenes. Hey! What nonsense are you two spouting? Amy is my precious wife. Apologize to her, now. They give a cursory apology, but I can see the mockery in their eyes. They're not the least bit sorry. In fact, anyone truly remorseful wouldn't mock someone's appearance in the first place. Their torment continues, forcing me to help with chores only to criticize my every move. Amy, you folded the laundry all wrong. Didn't I tell you before? How many times do I have to repeat myself? And the room you cleaned, I found dust in the corners. Go back and clean it again. Really, you never learn. Always getting scolded by mom for the same things. The ironing you did last time left creases, and I was embarrassed in public. Keith deserves a wife who can at least manage household chores. They relentlessly throw sarcastic remarks my way. If Keith or Thomas were around, they'd definitely put them in their place. Unfortunately, these two seize the moments they're not around to spew their venom. It is unbearable. I've talked to Keith about it countless times. He'd promptly call his family to confront Rebecca and Claire about their behavior. Though I appreciate it, sadly, it hasn't improved the situation. Desperate, I got Thomas's contact from Keith and decided to confide in him. Thomas listened without interrupting and promised to reprimand them. His words are comforting, but unfortunately nothing has changed. At this point, I've resigned myself to the fact that those two will never change. So next time, my confidant is Henry, a columnist. Henry first submitted his work to our magazine 5 years ago when I had just started managing writers. He's the writer I've worked with the longest. His columns always brim with originality, and I strongly recommended him to my superiors, securing our collaboration. Of course, the relationship between an editor and a writer is fundamentally professional. With most writers, no matter how long we've worked together, we rarely discuss anything beyond work. However, Henry is an exception. During meetings, we often share personal worries. I listen to his romantic troubles, and I vent about Keith. These exchanges are a welcome respite for me. While I've never had romantic feelings for him, our relationship was certainly more than just professional. I place absolute trust in him, and he trusts me as his editor as well. It's because we've built a relationship of mutual trust that we are able to work together and publish great columns in the magazine. Among the many writers I worked with, I regard Henry's talent as unparalleled. I greatly value his ability as a columnist. Naturally, I confide in him about my troubles with my in-laws. Each time I face harassment at my in-laws, I turn to him for counsel. Though he couldn't offer direct solutions or advice, just having someone listen makes me feel significantly lighter. Then one day, I received astonishing news. Claire was getting married. I knew she was actively seeking a partner at matchmaking events and singles parties, but given her personality, I thought marriage would be challenging for her. Yet, Keith told me she was suddenly getting married, leaving me stunned. At the same time, I couldn't help feeling sorry for the man marrying such a disagreeable woman. She must have put on a facade, presenting herself as a good woman in front of him. While I was processing that, Keith added, "This Saturday, there's a family meeting at the hotel in downtown. As her sister-in-law, could you come too, Amy?" Hearing it, I hesitated. Not because I had other plans, my schedule was clear. Considering all that Claire had done, I just couldn't bring myself to go. Sensing my reluctance, he pleaded, "I get how you feel, Amy, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime moment for Claire. I really want to celebrate her wedding. Please, can you help out? I'm begging you." He was about to cry. I was taken aback, but could feel his sincere concern for his sister. I learned that a fair number of relatives from the other side would attend, and my absence would be noticeable. Understanding the adult circumstances, I agreed to attend the family meeting. We decided to let Thomas know I'd be joining. He was thrilled about my participation. If I was going to be there, I decided to make the best of it. I bought a formal dress and resolved to wholeheartedly celebrate Claire's day. 2 days later, I got an unexpected call from Henry. Calls from Henry were rare unless he needed an extension for his column. But that time, it clearly wasn't about work. The deadline for his current column was far off, and it was a topic he was familiar with. Curious, I answered the call hesitantly. To my surprise, Henry sounded cheerful and said, "I have some important news for you today, Amy." Startled, I asked, "What's the important news?" He joyfully announced, "I'm getting married. The date isn't set yet, but I'll let you know. Please come to the wedding." I was almost moved to tears. For 5 years, we had shared the ups and downs of work and personal life. His marriage felt like my own joy. "Finally, you're getting married. Congratulations. I'll definitely be there. I'm curious about your fiancé, but let's talk about it when we meet." I replied, ending the call on a happy note. The back-to-back marriage announcements filled me with joy. With that happiness, I approached the day of Claire's wedding family meeting. Upon arriving at the designated hotel, I saw Rebecca and Claire chatting in the lobby. As I approached to greet them, Rebecca looked at me with disdain and snapped, "Amy, what are you doing here? Outsiders aren't allowed at this venue." Confused, I froze. Claire then added, "Today is an important family meeting for my wedding. Having someone like you here would embarrass me, the bride. And that unfashionable dress is just shameful. Amy, you're just an outsider who married Keith. We'll handle this as a family, so why don't you just stay home and do some housework?" At those words, my mind went blank. I had come to the hotel, dressed up and ready to celebrate her, not expecting such treatment. As I stood there undershocked, she took a water bottle from her bag, unscrewed the lid, and swung it at my face. "Just leave as soon as possible," she snapped. With her words, I realized she had splashed cold water all over my face. The makeup I had carefully applied was ruined, but that didn't bother me much. Makeup could be reapplied, but the relationship with her was irreparable. Indeed, I'm not related by blood to Claire. Being called an outsider by her is unavoidable. Nevertheless, to have my goodwill trampled, to be drenched and dismissed, that was beyond decency. I decided such a person wasn't worth any more of my time. Overwhelmed, I left the hotel. Being told to leave by one of the main family members, I felt I had no place there. Exiting the hotel, I darted into a nearby cafe, rushing to the restroom before ordering. I wiped my face with a handkerchief and hastily redid my makeup. Then, settling in the cafe, I ordered my favorite coffee and cake, seeking solace for my troubled heart. I wasn't in any state to head straight home. Before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. Staring at the empty coffee cup and the plate that held the cake, I was still grappling with what had happened. Then unexpectedly, Henry called. Wondering what it could be about, I answered. He sounded anxious. "Amy, were you by any chance at the hotel in downtown just now?" Confused about how he knew, I hesitantly confirmed. "Yes, right, I was there." There was a pause on the line, both of us lost for words. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry, Amy, but could you come back to that hotel immediately? If you're nearby, it's okay to take a taxi." Though I was just at a cafe near the hotel and didn't need a taxi, his words hinted at something urgent. Rushing back to the hotel, I found Henry dressed formally waiting for me in the lobby. Led by him, I found myself in the very room where Claire's wedding family meeting was taking place. As we entered, the color drained from Rebecca and Claire's faces, clearly not expecting me to be acquainted with Henry. That's when I grasped the situation. Henry was Claire's fiancé. As I took my seat, Henry stood and addressed the room. Thank you all for gathering today. Regrettably, I have to start with unfortunate news. This marriage will be annulled. The room erupted into chaos, understandably so, given the groom's sudden declaration of annulment. Claire protested. What do you mean by annulment? We've been getting along so well. Henry remained unfazed. Until this morning, annulment was the furthest thing from my mind. But then, I saw it, how you treated my valuable business partner, Amy. How you hurled cruel words at her, even dousing her with water from a bottle. His gaze then shifted to Claire and Rebecca. Following his gaze, I saw them turn deathly pale, clearly not expecting him to have witnessed their actions. Rebecca tried to defend themselves. Don't get us wrong, Henry. We were just giving Amy some advice because of her attitude. Right, Claire? Claire chimed in. Exactly. Amy is always mean to us. We just wanted her to reflect a little. It's really her fault. As they frantically spewed lies, trying to justify themselves, Keith stood to rebuke them. But then, a loud bang echoed through the room. Everyone turned to see Henry, his face filled with rage, glaring at Rebecca and Claire. Enough! Do you really think such childish lies will hold up? Amy is my lifesaver, having endorsed and supported me as a columnist. I know her character better than anyone. Amy is not someone who indulges in malice or traps others. She's nothing like you despicable people. As he spoke, the room fell into an eerie silence. Breaking the quiet, his father stood and announced, If Henry feels so strongly, it must be for a grave reason. I apologize, but let's consider this marriage annulled. Prompted by his relatives, one by one, they began to leave the room. Rebecca and Claire got stunned and could only watch them. They surely hadn't anticipated such consequences for their harassment when they first met me in the lobby. Following Henry's relatives, I also stood up to finally head home. Our eyes met briefly as I left, but Henry had spoken all that needed to be said. I had nothing more to add. Later, I learned that both were severely reprimanded by Thomas at home, becoming uncharacteristically subdued. Rebecca was sternly warned by Thomas that any further harassment towards me would lead to divorce. Apparently, the threat of divorce made her comprehend the seriousness of her actions. Moreover, Keith made the tough decision to cut ties with his own sister, Claire. Though she was his beloved sister, he couldn't condone anyone who harassed me, and he made that clear. That might have finally made her realize the gravity of her actions. After that, although I had visited the in-laws' house for various reasons, the situation turned different. I faced no further harassment from the two. That incident must have profoundly affected them, as annulment of a marriage over such matters is exceedingly rare. I do feel a bit sorry for them, but they brought it upon themselves. As for me, I continue to work with Henry. I'm grateful for the chance my role has given me to meet such an outstanding columnist. That case has only deepened my trust in him. Together, we'll keep striving to produce the best possible magazine.
The morning sun caught the edge of my tablet screen as I reviewed the quarterly reports. Even at this early hour, my WhatsApp was already buzzing with notifications. I knew without looking who it would be. Only one person would dare to message me at 7 am about my father's estate, Victoria. I continued analyzing the market trends, trying to focus on the familiar comfort of numbers and charts. My father had taught me that data never lies, even when people do. The roses on my balcony swayed gently in the morning breeze, my one concession to the gardening passion I'd inherited from him. These weren't the expansive gardens of his estate, but they were mine, blooming defiantly 20 stories above Manhattan. The message notification blinked again. Victoria's text dripped with artificial sweetness. Still buried in those boring financial reports, I see. Some things never change. I set my tablet down, my hand brushing against the small potted rose bush Dad had given me when I got my MBA. Life's not just about the numbers, Sarah, he'd said. Sometimes the most valuable growth happens in the smallest spaces. The white roses were blooming now, despite the city's harsh environment. I know why you're messaging, I typed back, keeping my tone professional. The reading of the will is tomorrow. My father's legacy isn't something to be discussed over WhatsApp. Victoria's response was immediate, accompanied by photos of the estate's interior. Your father's legacy needs updating. James and I have already chosen new furnishings. That dated decor has to go. The sight of their planned renovations made my stomach turn. Every piece of furniture she wanted to replace had a story. The mahogany desk where Dad had taught me about investment strategies. The leather armchair where he'd nursed me through my first stock market loss. The estate isn't yours to renovate, I replied, my finger hovering over the block button. But Dad's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes the best strategy is to let your opponent show their hand. Victoria sent another message, this one with a video tour of the garden. The landscapers are coming next week. All these old roses. Such a waste of space. We're thinking a modern Zen garden would be more appropriate. Time to say goodbye to Daddy's precious flowers. The pruning shears I used for my balcony roses suddenly felt heavy in my hand. I set them down carefully, remembering Dad's wisdom about patience and timing. He'd always said the markets were like his garden. Success came to those who knew when to act and when to wait. I picked up my phone and called the one person who would understand both the legal and emotional implications of what was unfolding. Emma. Victoria's making her moves earlier than we expected. Yes, she's exactly as aggressive as we anticipated. Can you come over? There's something about the will I need to discuss with you. My best friend's voice was firm and reassuring. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Don't respond to any more messages. Your father made sure all of this would play out exactly as it needs to. As I ended the call, my tablet chimed with a new email notification. The sender was unfamiliar, but the subject line made my heart skip. Time sensitive. Instructions from Robert Harrison. I noticed the attachment was dated 3 days before Dad's death. Well, Dad, I whispered, looking at my small urban garden. Looks like you left me one last investment strategy to execute. Sarah's apartment 30 minutes later. Emma arrived exactly on schedule, carrying her briefcase in one hand and a bottle of aged whiskey in the other. I thought we might need this, she said, holding up the bottle as she entered my apartment. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floors, a sound so different from Victoria's intrusive stride through Dad's garden in those surveillance videos. I was still at my desk, the mysterious email unopened on my tablet. The morning sun had shifted, casting long shadows across my home office, a space that felt both like a fortress and a confession booth these days. You haven't opened it yet. Emma nodded at my tablet, setting her briefcase down with a characteristic heavy thud. The sound reminded me of all the late nights we'd spent building cases together, from our law school days to now. I wanted to wait for you. I turned the tablet over, a gesture that felt heavier than it should. After what Victoria said about Michael helping them, Emma poured 2 generous measures of whiskey into my crystal tumblers, Dad's graduation gift, when I finished my MBA. Open it, Sarah. Your father was very specific about certain things being revealed at certain times. My head snapped up. What do you mean? She handed me a glass, the amber liquid catching the light. Open the email, Sarah. With steady fingers, steadier than I felt, I opened the attachment. Inside was a detailed PDF and an encrypted audio file. My dear Sarah, I read aloud, my father's voice echoing in my memory. If you're reading this, then someone has already moved on the company. Knowing human nature as I do, I'm guessing it's Victoria. She always did remind me of a hostile takeover, all promises and no substance. Emma raised her glass in a small salute. The encrypted file contains access codes to my private server. Inside, you'll find everything you need to protect what's yours. Remember what I taught you about market timing. Sometimes you have to let a stock fall to reveal its true value. Love, Dad. I looked up at Emma, who was already pulling out her laptop. You knew about this? I helped him set it up, she admitted, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Your father came to me 6 months ago, right after his diagnosis. He knew exactly how this would play out. The server access revealed a folder labeled Contingency. Inside was a trove of financial documents, surveillance photos, and email trails. One photo made my breath catch. Victoria meeting with someone in a shadowy corner of the financial district. Look at the timestamp, Emma pointed. This was taken 3 days before your father's death. My hands trembled as I picked up my glass. Is that Michael meeting with her? 3 weeks before your father died, Emma confirmed. But look at the next image. The second photo showed my brother leaving the meeting, his expression a mask of controlled rage. He was clutching what looked like a USB drive. He's been gathering evidence, Emma explained. Brought everything straight to your father. That's when Robert knew he had to accelerate the plan. But Victoria said Michael was helping them. Your brother's been playing a dangerous game, Sarah. Feeding them just enough information to keep them confident while helping your father document their attempted corporate takeover. Sarah's apartment, evening. I sank back in my chair, the weight of revelation heavy in my chest. The whiskey burned, but not as much as the truth. Why didn't he tell me? Because Victoria needed to show her hand first. Emma pulled out more documents from her briefcase. Tomorrow, when I read the will, Victoria and James will think they've won. The initial reading will grant them significant shares in Harrison Investments. What? I stood so quickly, my whiskey glass tipped, the amber liquid spreading across the financial reports like a stain. Let me finish. Emma held up her hand. That's when the contingency kicks in. Your father set up a corporate governance trap, Sarah. The moment they accept the shares, they trigger a clause that reveals their attempted hostile takeover. Everything, the insider trading, the attempted bribery, the offshore accounts, becomes part of the public record. I stared at the evidence spread across my desk, understanding dawning like a market opening bell. He made them think they'd won, so they'd incriminate themselves. Exactly. Emma's smile was sharp as a margin call. The actual controlling interest goes to you, with a protected trust set up for Michael. Victoria and James get nothing except a very public SEC investigation. And tomorrow, she finished her whiskey. We watch them walk right into the trap they set for themselves. I picked up Dad's email again, running my fingers over his digital signature. Even from beyond the grave, he was teaching me, protecting me, showing me how to fight back. One more thing, Emma said, checking her phone. Michael wants to see you tonight. Here's something else you need to know before tomorrow. I looked out my apartment window at the Manhattan skyline, thinking of my brother, of Victoria's smug messages, of all the pieces my father had carefully positioned like trades before a market shift. Tell him to come over. It's time for a family merger. Later that night, Michael arrived as the city lights were coming on, looking nothing like the polished investment banker who'd stood beside James at the funeral. His usually immaculate suit was creased, his eyes shadowed with the kind of exhaustion that comes from maintaining too many covers for too long. "You look terrible," I said, breaking the ice. "Yeah, well, playing double agent in corporate espionage isn't as glamorous as the movies make it seem." He attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I come in?" Sarah's apartment, late evening. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Emma had left an hour ago, but the evidence of our earlier discovery still cluttered my workspace. Financial documents mixing with surveillance photos like a strange corporate collage. "I see you found Dad's contingency plan," Michael said, nodding at the scattered papers. "Why didn't you tell me what you were doing?" The question came out sharper than I intended, analyst's precision cutting through sisterly concern. He collapsed into the chair, his banker's posture crumbling. "Because I needed to make it right. After everything with James, the way I handled your divorce. I was worse than a bad investment, Sarah. I was a liability." "You were my brother," I corrected. "You were supposed to be my safest investment." "I know." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. "This is what Victoria offered me to testify that Dad wasn't a sound mind when he made his final corporate restructuring. $5 million in offshore accounts to betray my own sister." I stared at the drive, then at my brother. "But you didn't take it." "No, I took it straight to Dad." Michael's voice cracked. "You should have seen his face, Sarah. Not angry, just disappointed. Like watching a promising startup fail its IPO. The city hummed 20 stories below, a constant reminder of the financial world we'd both been raised in. "There's more," Michael continued, pulling out his secure phone. "I recorded everything. Every meeting, every offer, every threat. Victoria, she's been planning this takeover for months. Even before Dad's diagnosis." He pressed play. Victoria's voice filled my office. "Once the old man's out, we'll contest the corporate restructuring using your testimony about his mental state and James' long-standing position in the company. We'll get controlling interest. That Sarah won't know what hit her." My hands clenched into fists. "When was this?" 2 months ago. But wait, there's worse." He fast-forwarded the recording. James' voice now. "We'll liquidate the non-performing assets, strip the company for parts. Sarah can go back to her entry-level analysis position. She never deserved the executive track anyway." "Turn it off," I whispered. Sarah's apartment, near midnight. Michael complied, then pulled out one final document. "This is why I came tonight. Victoria didn't just want the company, Sarah. She wanted revenge. On you." "Revenge? For what?" "For making James look incompetent. For exposing his trading losses. He paused. "For making him face consequences when you caught their insider trading scheme." The memory hit me like a market crash. Walking into the trading floor, finding their unauthorized positions, Victoria's triumphant smile as my marriage imploded alongside their illegal trades. She was our CFO for 3 years, Michael continued. She planned everything, worked her way up into James' confidence, into Dad's executive circle. This document proves she started embezzling from Harrison Investments 6 months before you discovered their trading scheme. I grabbed the paper, my analyst's eyes scanning the transaction records and account numbers. Dad knew about this, found out right before his diagnosis. He was building a case with the SEC, but the cancer. Michael's voice trailed off. That's when he started planning this instead, I said. Sometimes the best market correction needs a different approach. The contingency plan, Michael murmured. Yeah, tomorrow's going to be brutal. They think they've got it all figured out. Victoria's even hired a PR team to document their historic acquisition of Harrison Investments. Despite everything, I laughed. She hired cameras to record her own downfall. Dad would have appreciated the market irony. Michael smiled, a genuine one this time. Listen, I know I can't fix the past 3 years with one night of revelations, but I want you to know I'm here now. Whatever happens tomorrow, I've got your back. I walked to my balcony, looking out at my small rose garden, silvered by city lights. Remember when we were kids and Dad caught us fighting over that first stock picking contest? Sarah's apartment, late night. Michael joined me at the balcony. He made us analyze each other's portfolios. Said we needed to learn to see value clearly. I turned to face my brother. I see clearly now, Michael. I see what Dad was trying to teach us, even at the end. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. That sometimes the biggest market win isn't in aggressive trading. It's in letting your opponents overextend themselves. My phone chimed with a WhatsApp message from Emma. Final preparations complete for tomorrow. The SEC representatives are confirmed. The city pulsed below us, a reminder that tomorrow was getting closer with each tick of the market clock. You should get some rest, Michael said, gathering his evidence. Tomorrow's going to be one hell of a shareholders' meeting. As I watched him leave, I touched the glass of my balcony door, cool and solid under my fingers. Dad had always loved high-rise views, said they were the eyes of the financial world, watching over his legacy. Tomorrow they would witness justice served, exactly the way he had planned it. The next morning, Harrison Investments headquarters. The morning of the will reading dawned bright and clear. I sat in Dad's executive office, watching Emma arrange papers on his massive mahogany desk, while camera equipment was set up around the room. Victoria's PR team is here, Michael announced, slipping through the door. You should see her out there, practicing her acceptance speech for the board. Everything ready? I asked Emma. She potted her briefcase. All set. The contingency plan is sealed in this envelope, along with copies of all the evidence. Once they accept the initial terms. A commotion in the hallway cut her off. Victoria's voice carried through the door, high and excited. This is where we'll put the new trading floor. The old layout is so inefficient. Places everyone. Harrison Investments boardroom. Let the show begin, Emma muttered, straightening her suit jacket as Victoria swept in wearing a black designer dress that probably cost more than a junior analyst's annual bonus. James followed, looking uncomfortable in his bespoke suit. The PR team trailed behind them, adjusting lights and checking camera angles. Sarah. James nodded stiffly. It was the first time he'd addressed me directly since the insider trading scandal. "Let us begin," Emma announced, taking her place behind Dad's desk. "As Robert's general counsel, I'll be reading his last will and testament, along with any additional corporate governance documents he prepared before his passing." Victoria practically bounced in her leather chair. "We're ready." The initial reading went exactly as Emma had warned me. Dad's estate and company shares were to be divided. 60% to me, 40% to James and Victoria. "I knew it," Victoria squealed, grabbing James' arm. "Robert trusted our vision for the company." However, Emma continued, her voice cutting through Victoria's celebration. "There is a contingency clause to the corporate restructuring, added 3 days before Robert's death." Victoria's smile faltered. "A what?" "A governance modification," James explained, suddenly looking nervous, his years in corporate law showing through. "What kind of modification?" Emma broke the seal on the envelope. "The acceptance of any controlling interest under this will is contingent upon a full investigation into certain financial irregularities discovered in the months preceding Robert's death." The boardroom went silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. "What irregularities?" Victoria's voice had lost its triumphant edge. "Perhaps these will explain," Emma said, sliding the photos across the polished mahogany. "Or this USB drive, containing footage of attempted bribery. Or these transaction records, showing systematic embezzlement from Harrison Investments." Harrison Investments boardroom. Minutes later, James grabbed one of the financial records, his face draining of color. "Where did you get these?" Dad had quite the audit trail, Michael spoke up from his corner. "Including recordings of you both planning to contest the company restructuring based on false testimony about his mental state." Victoria stood up so fast her executive chair toppled backward. "Turn those cameras off. Now." "Oh no," I said, standing to face her. "The cameras stay. You wanted to document this historic acquisition, remember? You can't do this." She hissed, "James, tell them they can't do this." But James was still staring at the evidence, particularly one document showing him entering a competitor's office with confidential trading algorithms. "The contingency clause is quite clear," Emma continued, professional as ever. "Any attempt to claim controlling interest automatically triggers the release of all this evidence to the SEC and proper authorities. The choice is yours." "Choice?" Victoria laughed hysterically. "What choice?" "You've trapped us." "No," I corrected her, channeling Dad's calm during market volatility. "You trapped yourselves. Every scheme, every fraudulent trade, every attempt to steal what wasn't yours. It all led to this moment. This is your fault." She whirled on Michael. "You were supposed to help us." Michael adjusted his tie. "I did help. Just not you." "James," she pleaded. "Do something." But James was already standing, straightening his collar with shaking hands. "It's over, Victoria. We've lost. The hell it is. I won't let that. That is my daughter." Dad's voice filled the boardroom. Everyone froze as Emma played the video file. Dad's face appeared on the boardroom screen, thin but determined, recorded just days before his death. "And if you're watching this, it means you've shown your true colors, just as I knew you would. The market always reveals the truth about value. And you've just proven you have none. Harrison Investments boardroom. The aftermath. Victoria's mascara ran in black streaks as she backed toward the boardroom door. This isn't over. Actually, Emma said, it is. The SEC agents are waiting in the lobby to discuss the evidence of securities fraud. I'd suggest cooperating. It might help with sentencing. As Victoria and James were led away, the cameras still rolling, I felt Dad's presence in every corner of his executive office. He'd orchestrated it all, not just to protect his company, but to teach one final lesson about corporate integrity and patience. Well, Michael said into the silence, I guess those cameras did catch their historic market moment after all. The media circus that followed was exactly what Victoria had wanted, just not in the way she'd planned. By evening, financial news networks lined the street, and my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with calls from reporters. You need to see this, Michael said, turning up the volume on Dad's old Bloomberg terminal in the study. Victoria's arrest was playing on every channel, her mascara-streaked face, a stark contrast to her designer dress, as SEC agents led her to their vehicle. The investigation into Harrison Investments has uncovered multiple instances of securities fraud, the reporter's voice droned on. Turn it off, I said, rubbing my temples. I can't watch anymore. Emma burst through the door, waving her phone. It gets better. The U.S. attorney just called. They found offshore accounts, shell corporations, everything. Victoria wasn't just stealing from your father's company. She was running a sophisticated financial fraud scheme. And James? I asked, not sure why I still cared about my ex-husband's fate. Cooperating fully with the authorities, Michael replied. Turns out he's not so loyal when facing serious federal charges. Harrison Investments, Executive Office, evening. A sharp knock at the office door made us all jump. A federal investigator entered, looking apologetic. Ms. Harrison, we need to discuss some additional evidence we've uncovered. More? I gestured for him to sit. What now? We found documents in Ms. Pierce's private server suggesting this wasn't her first financial scheme. There are at least 3 other cases of her targeting financial institutions, though she never succeeded on this scale before. Emma leaned forward, lawyer instincts engaged. Other companies? Yes. She would typically work her way up through corporate ranks, then orchestrate situations to gain access to trading systems. The investigator pulled out a file. Sound familiar? The CFO position, I whispered. It wasn't random. No, it wasn't. She specifically targeted your ex-husband because of his position in Harrison Investments. The affair was just her entry strategy. My stomach turned. 3 years of self-doubt about my failed marriage suddenly shifted perspective. There's something else, the investigator continued. We found this in her encrypted files. It appears to be a detailed plan for after she gained control of the company. He handed me a document that made my blood run cold. Detailed notes about accidents that could befall me after the transfer of power, plans to frame Michael for securities fraud, even strategies to dismantle Dad's carefully built company piece by piece. She would have destroyed everything, I said flatly. She never would have gotten the chance, Michael growled, gripping his armrest. The investigator nodded grimly. This evidence upgrades the charges significantly. Combined with the securities fraud and attempted bribery, she's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Harrison Investments, Executive Office. Late evening. After the investigator left, we sat in stunned silence until Emma's phone buzzed again. "It's my contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office," she said, reading the message. "James just finished his statement. He's admitted to everything, including helping Victoria access confidential trading algorithms before Dad's death. Did he know?" I had to ask about her plans for the company. "No," Michael answered, scanning the documents. According to this, she kept that part to herself. Probably knew he wouldn't have the stomach for corporate sabotage. A thought struck me. Dad knew, didn't he? That's why he put all this in motion. Emma nodded slowly. He suspected. That's why he hired the forensic accountants, why he documented everything. He wasn't just protecting his legacy, he was protecting the entire company, and you. I walked to the window of Dad's office, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, now swarming with news vans. The lights of the financial district still blazed, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded in one of its towers. "We should release a statement," Michael suggested. "Control the narrative before Victoria's lawyers try to spin this." "Already drafted." Emma pulled out her laptop. "A simple statement about cooperating with federal authorities and requesting privacy during this transition period. Professional, measured. Everything Victoria wasn't." "Dad would like that," I said, managing a small smile. "There's one more thing," Michael said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "I found this in Dad's private safe. It's marked after justice is served. Harrison Investments Executive Office Night." My hands shook as I opened the envelope, recognizing Dad's distinctive handwriting once again. "My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally come to light. Don't let this experience harden your market instincts. The company still needs nurturing, and leadership still needs vision. I didn't set this trap just for justice. I did it so you could be free. Free from doubt, free from fear, and free to lead with integrity. Remember what I taught you about investment horizons. The best growth comes after a market correction. The company is yours now, to guide into the future. And don't forget to tend to those roses. Some things are worth more than any market valuation. Love always, Dad." Outside, financial reporters continued their live broadcasts, telling the world about the scandal, the arrests, the corporate fraud. But inside Dad's office, surrounded by the evidence of his foresight and wisdom, I finally felt something I hadn't experienced since discovering James and Victoria's betrayal 3 years ago: peace. "So," Michael said, breaking the silence, "what now?" I looked out at the city lights, then at my brother and best friend. "Now we rebuild. Not just the company, everything." To Dad, Michael raised his coffee mug. "To integrity," Emma added, raising hers. I picked up my own mug, thinking of market cycles and garden seasons, of endings and beginnings, of growth and renewal. Through the window, the city glowed in the night, each light a reminder of Dad's belief that true value can emerge even from the darkest market corrections. He'd given me more than justice. He'd given me back my future, one calculated step at a time.